Hello, screenwriters. Welcome back to Five Questions with a Screenwriter. And the screenwriter we have today with us is Clint Williams. Clint, thank you so much for coming on, talking screenwriting with me.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. All right, so we're going to jump straight into it. Question number one. What are three screenplays every new writer should read, in your opinion?
This is a good question, and my answer might be a little different than a lot of folks. Um, the first two scripts you should read are of movies that you absolutely love. The kind of movies where you can recite every line, the movies where you can just close your eyes and see frame by frame. I mean, movies you know by heart. You know, I mean, even if it's Transformers. I mean, anything, anything. And the reason for that is when you see how, when you're reading the script, you know how it translated to the screen. You know how the actors delivered the lines. You know, sort of the structure of it. I mean, and you can see it. So, it'll help you gauge like what works on the page and transfers to the screen, if that makes sense. And you can see, and a lot of times the screenplay will be somewhat different than the actual film, and usually you'll be able to guess exactly why. Like one of the first screenplays I read, maybe I wasn't the first, but the second was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which, like a lot of old white guys, is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen it seriously 20 times or more in my life.
Wow.
And I could at one time recite every line. But there are whole sections of the screenplay that aren't in the film. And some stuff's moved around and, or shortened, or there's a whole different scene or a little bit. And anyway, it just helps you sort of analyze what works on the page, and it just kind of helps you break down movies, if that makes sense, and what it takes to write them. And then, so that should be the first two. And then the third one should probably be Lethal Weapon by Shane Black, because Lethal Weapon was one of those, spec screenplays back in the day that was famous for its voice. You hear a lot of that about voice. And basically Shane Black wrote that script to entertain the reader. There's a lot of stuff in the script that isn't on the screen, but it's like fun. It's fun to read. It's engaging to, whatever the, 22-year-old intern that's, reading your script before passing it on to the manager or the producer. And so I would read that so you can just get an idea of what it takes for a screenplay to be a good read. A lot of people, anyway, that's what I would do. Because it's just fun to read. And if it's fun to read, people will pass it along.
So do you hear that, audience? So read what you love. I think it's great advice. Read what you love, and then so remind me, was it like a Lethal Weapon, like the first like screenplay that had like a bidding war, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big milestone kind of spec. Shane Black got a ton of money for it, and I don't know if it was $1 million or $3 million or something, but it was like that, back in the day. And so it's kind of an iconic screenplay. And since then, you've got a lot of Shane Black wannabes that just, it's like, shut up and tell me the story. There are just too many inside jokes and unfilmables and stuff like that. But that's a good one to read because, it's the first one, and obviously he did it right. So.
Question number two. What is something a screenwriter will never learn in a book?
Writing dialogue, writing good dialogue. And writing dialogue is super hard, and I think a lot of it is just hinges on talent, how much talent you have. It's kind of like, in sports, in football, they say you can't coach speed. And so I don't know if you can coach writing really good dialogue. There's some stuff you can do, but I mean, it's just super important. It can make or break a screenplay. It's, you know, writing dialogue that's natural and compelling, where every character has a distinctive voice. It's got to be the toughest part about screenwriting. I mean, because there's so much like vocabulary, syntax, cadence, rhythm. I mean, it's all clues about the character, about their education, about their income, where they grew up. I mean, it's a good way to build character. And so, some stuff you can do is just like eavesdrop on people, and you're watching TV or whatever like that. Um, there's a lot of ways to pick up on it. Different dialogue, but in everyday life, but it can be harder if you're writing period pieces, and unfortunately, I tend to write period pieces, which do well in contests, but nobody wants to buy. I had a script called Freedom Fort that was a nickel quarter finalist and a finalist in Big Break. Um, uh, the final draft Big Break contest. And then it was just named to the Georgia list, which is a list of screenplays compiled by the Blacklist uh, by writers who have a strong connection to Georgia, to the Peach State. But anyway, it's set in the early 1800s. And so, I don't know how people back then talked, but I read a lot of letters and journals and uh, and books written in that time period, and then I did the same again for another script of mine, Enemy, which was set in the 1700s, and, and kind of focuses on a group of Spanish cavalrymen, and that was a nickel top 50 script. But for that, I read a bunch of journals written by Spanish military people of the 1700s, about the same time. And so what that does, that gives you a sense of the language of the time and, again, the vocabulary, the rhythm, um, the phrases, phraseology, and all that kind of stuff. And so if you do that, if you just like read, and your eyes will train your ear, that'll help you with period pieces. And the rest of the stuff is just, listen to people and talk to a lot of people. I mean, I was a newspaper reporter for a long time, so I talked to, vice presidents and, prostitutes. It was like I talked to a lot of different people. So over time, you know, I sort of absorbed a lot of different uh, dialogue, I guess. And anyway, that's the hardest thing. And I think also it just relies on getting the reps. I mean, you just got to get the reps, because a big mistake, not big mistake, well, no, it is a big challenge for a lot of beginning writers is everybody in the script sounds the same, because everybody in the script sounds like and so it's like, well, what would Clint, old white guy say in this situation? Well, unless I've got a screenplay full of old white guys, that's probably not a good tool. And so, anyway, so eavesdrop on people, talk to people who aren't like yourself. And then if you're writing a period piece, there's tons of, and now it's all on the internet. So, I can just Google, uh, you know, uh, English sea captain journals of 1640 and find 50 of them. So anyway, that's what I would say.
You know what? I agree so much with you about dialogue. Dialogue, personally, to me, it is like the toughest thing
Mm-hmm.
that that I struggle with
Right.
because just like it's so tough. And whenever I read a screenplay, when the dialogue is just so amazing, it's jumping off the page. I'm like, oh my god, like this writer makes it look so easy, and I get like a little envious. I'm like, oh my, how do they do it? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just reps. I mean, it's like any sport. It's like dancing. It's like gymnastics. It's just like you got to get the reps, and then you just have to eavesdrop, I guess. I don't know, but I mean, it is really hard. That's the hardest part. And I've read a lot of scripts. Like when you're swapping scripts with other, new writers, and you'll read stuff, and it's just like, oh, I don't want to rewrite your dialogue for you, but I could. I mean, it would just be whatever, because it's really hard. Everything else could be really good. The scene description's really good, the structure's good, whatever, but just the back and forth between people. So anyway,
You mentioned a good gym as far as like when all characters sound the same, right? I know
right,
there was a screenplay that I wrote a while ago where I didn't realize that, but all the characters sounded like me, you know. So
right,
I've gotten a lot better at that. So
right,
you new screenwriters out there, read your screenplays, make sure all your characters do not
right,
sound like you. That is
right,
great advice.
because that's not necessarily what they mean by voice. You know what I mean? It's like, um, your characters, a lot of your characters anyway, are going to reflect what you would say in a certain situation, but they shouldn't say it how you would say it. If that makes sense, So, whatever. That's
All
it.
right. Let's move on to question number 3. What is the greatest character arc you've ever seen in a story?
This is a really good question. I mean, this is like good on you coming up with this question, just because I was talking to my son, who sadly was a film major, but about this, because this is a good kind of film nerd question. But anyway,
I love this question too.
yeah, yeah, no, it's a good question. But I'm going to go with Simba from The Lion King.
Ooh,
I
okay.
mean, just because, everybody talks about, it's basically a retelling of Hamlet. But I mean, think about it. You go from, this kind of goofy, carefree toddler in a way, right? And, and then he becomes this, noble, heroic king. I mean, that's a pretty wide, that's a pretty leaping arc. And then also, when I tuned in on Simba, but also like, Pumbaa and Timon too. I mean, because they're just a pair of goofballs at the beginning. And then, at the end, they're loyal, heroic, you know, uh, you know, kind of warriors for Simba. So anyway, that movie, which is being re-released this year,
Wait,
in theaters. So,
so I take it just by that answer, Lion King is one of your favorite films?
oh yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean it's couple one. I mean, I think it's great, and then at the time, just the look of it on the big screen. I mean, if you haven't seen it on the big screen, take advantage of this re-release, because I mean, it just blew me away. I mean, it just blows you away. And I know they've done a bunch of remakes of it and stuff, which I've ignored. But then also, kind of sentimentally, it was the first movie I took my son to, and he was 3, and we're at a movie theater in the middle of the afternoon, so there's about 4 people in the movie theater, and he was so captivated, he stood up the whole movie. And at first I was going like, oh, get down in your seat, get down in your seat. Then I looked around, and he wasn't anybody's sight line or anything, and there was hardly anybody in the theater anyway. And I mean, he just stood like this. He was just looking up at the screen. He was just blown away for the whole 2 hours. Anyway, it was cool. So
Wow, that is great storytelling when a story could do that to you.
oh yeah, and the visuals, everything about it. I mean, it is a great movie. So
All right, question number 4. What was the first screenplay you wrote, and what was that writing process like?
okay. All right. When I was in college, I was a journalism major, and I got a job offer before my last semester. So I said, I'm going to college to get a job. I got a job, and so I bailed. So then I worked in newspapers for about 30 years and took a buyout at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And then I decided to get my bachelor's degree, like finish up my degree, because it was easy now with online learning and everything. And so I had to take 2 electives, and one of them was screenwriting, and I just dug it. I mean, I just dug it. But so the first screenplay I wrote was it's called Saving Elvis, and it's about a burned out rock critic and his billionaire publisher who go back in time to rescue Elvis, a self-destructive Elvis, from himself and the evil Colonel Tom Parker. So anyway, it's very boomer. It's about Elvis. But anyway, so because of my background in newspapers, I could write with clarity and brevity. But the idea of writing 100 pages and 100 or 120 pages was kind of daunting to me, because most newspaper stories are 1,000 words or less, and you're looking at writing maybe 20,000 words in a screenplay. I don't know. So one of the actually this right here. Whoop, whoop. So this was our textbook in that class.
I have that book.
Yeah, it's a great book, and it's the only screenplay writing book you need, I think. But there's a technique that's outlined in that Sid Field book, where basically you've got Act 1, Act 2A, Act 2B, and Act 3. And then you break down each of those 4 sections into 14 3x5 cards. And I think that's a pretty random number he came across or whatever. And so then each card is a scene. And so you just jot down notes on each card, and, so you know what the scene is. And it's kind of like how you outline the story. But that technique just sort of helped me get my arms around the whole process of writing a 100-page screenplay, because I wasn't focusing on 100 pages. I was focusing on one 3x5 index card. Sort of like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So that was really helpful to me, and I still use that technique. I mean, whenever I start a screenplay, it's like I put together a playlist, and then I buy a pack of 3x5 index cards.
So, being new to screenwriting during that time, I know you had a background as a reporter. So, what was the most, I guess, like a surprising aspect of screenwriting compared to being like a news writer?
Shit will pop into your head. It's, I mean, it's like, I mean, it's kind of a cliche about like you're in the shower or whatever, and but I mean, I would just be walking across a room, and it's like somebody talking in my head and says a line, and you know, it I mean that was that was that's interesting. I mean, that's always an interesting part of the thing, and then or stuff just you know this kind. I don't know how to explain this, but there's sometimes where you are consciously making shit up, right? You know, you're sitting there and you've got your index cards or however you outline or your notebook or whatever, and you're writing stuff down, and it's like, okay, this he does this, then he does that, and she says this, and then there's times where just random stuff pops into your brain that is unconscious, that is like not deliberate, that is just I don't know, just I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if magic is the word because I don't think I've written anything magical, but I mean, it's just kind of cool. So that's,
Was
that's kind of it.
So, what would you say was the most challenging part about writing your first screenplay?
Um, Dialogue. I mean, that's, because in a way I was writing about two journalists, and so it's hard to make them, not just sound exactly like me. So that's always hard. And then, just I guess maybe story and setups and payoffs and stuff like that. Because I'm trying to think, because it's been a while, but I think the first draft of Saving Elvis was like maybe 68 pages,
Hmm.
and it's like I'm going like, oh, I don't know much about screenwriting, but I know this ain't gonna work, So, just having to go back and kind of, build character, kind of build character more and create character more. I mean, that's always a hard part. And it's like coming up with like the protagonist is typically pretty easy, I mean, but it's like building all the other characters in the world. That's to me, that's hard. And, because they're not really part of the story. And, you just have them do what they need to do to drive the story. But the good stuff has more than that. So I don't know.
Were
So
you
that might be
okay?
one of my weaknesses, I guess.
Were you okay with the structure? Because I know for a lot of new screenwriters, that's like a little scary about the structure of a screenplay.
Yes. Yeah, I think so because really a lot of newspaper stories had kind of a three-act structure, I mean, and so, um, and that, again, that's where that index card thing helps, because you can just lay them out on a table or pin them up on a cork board and you just see it right there, So,
All right, I know
um,
I know we spent a lot of time on this question. I don't know. It's just like
yeah,
I always get excited about hearing about the first scrhateclay,
right,
like a writer has written.
right.
So, all right.
And see, and the thing is, it's like, what's funny is the screenplay, um, I mean, I don't, I don't know if it works, to be honest with you. I mean, it's like, and I'll go back into it about every 2 years and see if I can resurrect it or something. And so I don't know if it works, but I don't know why it doesn't work. And you know what I mean? So it's one thing to know, my car won't run, but it's another thing to know how to fix it to get it going. But I mean, there's some stuff in it that Love. I just love it. And there's one line from that screenplay that I have shoehorned into 3 other screenplays because I want to see it on screen someday. So, and then, I mean, stop me if this is too much. But then, after that, my son and I wrote a screenplay together. It's a zombie flick set in the Middle Ages called Deliver Us from Evil. And that got an 8 on the Blacklist. The Blacklist website, where you upload it and you get it rated and stuff. And anyway, and I don't know. I mean, I still think that's pretty good. But it's, it would cost $80 million to make it. So, it's but it's a zombie flick, but it's set in the Middle Ages. So you got, knights in armor fighting zombies and stuff. It's kind of cool. But
that's a winning combination in my book.
Well, I think it's probably the most commercial or high concept script I've written. But and then after that, I wrote Freedom Fort, which was a nickel quarterfinalist, and yada yada. And then I wrote that's an expensive period piece, and so then I wrote a low budget action thriller, and then I wrote another low budget action thriller, and then I wrote Enemy, which is another period piece. So anyway.
All right. We're finally moving on to the final question.
Okay.
All right. You get to plan and go on a non-romantic date with your current main character. What does that date look like?
Yeah. Well, the last screenplays I finished is got no women in it. It's just all dudes. So we'd probably just go to a baseball game and drink a couple beers. So
that is a fun non-romantic date in my book.
Yeah, there you
Baseball
go. So
and beer, So
yeah, that's right. So
oh,
I don't know. As long as we don't have to root for the Dodgers, that's all. So
oh, well, I hope there's no Dodger fans watching this.
Yeah, right. You get some comments.
I know.
So.
Oh man. Oh, this has been 5 questions with screenwriter Clint Williams. Clint, this has been so much fun.
Well,
Thank you
thanks.
so
It
much.
has been fun.
That concludes the official 5 questions. So I do want to ask you: are you working on anything at the moment? Are you writing anything at the moment that you could talk about?
Yeah, I'm trying. It's I mean, I've started and stopped a few things. I was going to try to, I wrote about 20 pages of TV pilot and decided that didn't work. And plus, I'm too old for TV. And then I've written the start of another kind of action thriller, but I'm just not feeling it. And so I'm really, how do I say this? It's like I don't have many scripts left in me. You know what I mean? So I've got to come up with sort of the killer concept because concept's king. That's just it. You just got to come up with, Jaws or Die Hard or something like that if you want to get any real world traction. I mean, nickel advancement and stuff is nice, but most people don't really, real professionals just really don't care about that. So, yeah, so I've been knocking around some kind of, something high concept where people go like, oh yeah, that's a movie. So, which is harder than you think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the hardest part of this gig is coming up with that. Oh yeah, that's a movie. Oh yeah, I'll spend $5 million to do that. That's the hard part. So I don't know where you are in your journey, but That's what I would suggest. Come up with the thing, you know.
Yeah.
If you want to do, like, I don't know, you know, the lonely 14-year-old girl who moves into a new town and has to find her way. It's like, yeah, you do that. Nobody's going to buy it, or like I do, here's this, uh, expensive period piece about a slice of American history that nobody knows about, and turns out nobody cares about. So that kind, it's like, good luck with that, pal. It doesn't matter what Nickel thinks. Nobody's gonna buy that script. So
I know what you mean as far as writing is tough.
yeah,
So all you new screenwriters out there, definitely do it because you love it.
yeah,
And like Clint mentioned that a high concept, will definitely a high concept well executed will open a lot of doors for you, but it's still nothing is guaranteed. It's tough.
yeah. And I would say if the concept is good enough, it doesn't even have to be well executed. They
Interesting.
can just, if you came up with, you know, uh, Die Hard on a Bus, the speed. If you came up with that, they might go like, "Oh, that's really good," and just buy the movie, then fire you and hire somebody to rewrite it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Uh, all right. All right. And finally, what's a recent film or TV show you've watched that you would recommend to our viewers?
um, there are two movies. There are two movies I'm going to suggest, and this is why, because these are the kind of movies that I would write, if that makes sense. Like, these are the kind of movies that, um, like, my low budget action uh, feature, No Heroes Here. Like, I would use these movies as comps for that, if that makes sense. And one is called Knox Goes Away, and it is stars Michael Keaton, and it's about a guy who's a hitman who's got a very rapid onset dementia. So he's got to set things right. And another one is called In the Land of Sinners and Saints, which has got Liam Neeson in it, and it takes place in Ireland. And they're both about guys kind of trying to seek redemption in the final days, sort of thing, which, as an aging boomer, kind of speaks to me. So, um, anyway, but they're the kind of movies that, they're action, but they're not, big blow up, high body count bullshit. More focused on character than body count. Um, anyway, those are two that I would suggest you see, mostly just because, like, those are the kind of movies I try to write. So that's it.
All right. All right. Well,
So,
before we wrap up, is there anything, you want to share with our viewers? Do you want, anyone to like follow you anywhere or anything else you want to share?
well, I'm on, X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. It's at Clint W3. Um, that's about it. So
I'll
I'm
make
going
sure
to the
to.
Austin Film Festival in October. If you see me, I'll buy you a beer. Well, I don't know. How many viewers do you guys get? Do you get? I don't want to buy 7,000 beers. So,
Hopefully, we're not there yet.
all right.
We're getting close, but we're
So,
not
all
there
right.
yet.
So the first five, I'll do the first five who can hit me up who saw this.
All right, I'll make sure to put your X / Twitter handle in the description,
Oh,
and
sure.
And Clint, I really enjoyed this. Hopefully, I know this was a long interview, so hopefully, everyone sticks around, till the very
Um,
end, and I really appreciate it. This was very fun.
sure. Okay.
All right. Thank you again.